weekend in Italian football, huh? Serie A Analyze really threw us some curveballs.
Yeah, some really unexpected results.
Absolutely, and that's what we are going to be looking at today.
Sounds good.
Not just the scores, but kind of what those scores tell us about what we can expect going forward. You gave us a snapshot of the weekend's action, and we're here to really kind of break it down.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so let's start at the top with Inter. They were up 2-0 against Parma, who were, fighting to avoid relegation. And then they drew.
Yeah.
2-2.
Big 2 points dropped.
Yeah. What really stood out to you about that?
Well, I think the substitutions were kind of the turning point in that match. They got off to a great start. Classic DeMarco crossed to Darmian. We've seen that work so many times.
Yeah.
And then Thuram got a bit of a lucky second goal. But then the changes in the second half really seemed to disrupt their flow. And, especially the leadership on the pitch makes you wonder if they're maybe a little too reliant on certain players.
Yeah, it almost feels like, they were trying to rest players for the European fixtures coming up, but actually kind of backfired and maybe even destabilized them a little bit.
Potentially.
We heard that Lautaro was not happy about being taken off.
Mm.
Could that be a sign of a bigger problem there, of a kind of a unease when the normal players aren't on the pitch?
Yeah. It's a good point. We have to look at the bigger picture here. It's not just about the 2 points dropped. Teams that give up leads late in games, it often affects their confidence going forward, especially against teams that are really, fighting hard. So, you wonder if maybe Inter will now start to play a little more conservatively, which could actually help the teams that are happy to sit back and hit them on the counterattack.
All right.
To their credit, Parma really took advantage of the situation. Bernabe with his first ever Serie A goal.
Wow.
And Ondrejka following up on a deflection, just goes to show how quickly the momentum can change in a football match.
Yeah, and that draw now means that Napoli can smell blood, I guess.
Yeah.
If they win their next match, they're just 1 point behind Inter.
Yeah.
That must put a lot of pressure on Inter now.
No doubt. This could be a really costly result for Inter, not just in terms of the points, but also, the psychology. It's not easy to bounce back from dropping points when you were in a winning position, especially when you've got your rivals breathing down your neck. It'll be interesting to see how they respond.
So let's move on to AC Milan. They drew with Fiorentina 2-2 in a game that was pretty crazy. They were 2 goals down after just 10 minutes. Incredibly, this is the 7th time this season that they've conceded an early goal.
Wow.
So that's more than just a blip.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pattern.
Yeah, it's definitely a worrying trend. To consistently start games so poorly, it suggests maybe there's an issue with their pre-match preparation or maybe even their tactics. But the fact that they keep coming back, Brahim Diaz and Jovic with the goals in this one to rescue a point, it shows that they've got a lot of quality in attack, and they're mentally strong.
Yeah, but are they mentally strong, or are they just, do they just need that kick in the pants to get going?
Right.
It's almost like they only really turn up when their backs are against the wall.
It's possible.
But even with this comeback, does this draw actually change anything for them?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things?
I'm not so sure. I mean, if Fiorentina played well, they maybe deserve to win the match.
Yeah.
But I think this result just highlights how inconsistent Milan are.
Right.
They've definitely got the firepower to come back from these deficits. Jovic is scoring goals for fun at the moment. But giving your opponents a 2-goal head start every week, it's not a recipe for success, especially against the better teams. And to make things worse, Jimenez, who was a big signing for them in January, he got injured straight away. So, there are definitely some underlying problems there.
Now, let's switch gears to the Lombardy derby between Monza and Como. This is way more than just a football match. I mean, these two teams have been rivals for over 100 years, and Como really pulled off a shock, winning 3-1 away from home. What does this say about where these two teams are at?
Well, I think what's really interesting about this derby is how different the two clubs are right now. They both came up from Serie B together a few years ago, but they're on very different paths. And that rivalry, all those years of battling for promotion, it just adds so much more, emotion to the game. For Monza, this defeat is a huge blow to their hopes of staying in Serie A. I mean, you could hear the fans how unhappy they were at the final whistle. It could be a real turning point for them.
Yeah, and on the other side of that coin, this is a massive result for Como. It's way more than just 3 points. They came from behind after Danamoda scored for Monza.
Yeah.
Then D'Ambrosio, Diao, and Voivoda all scored for Como.
Oh.
They showed real resilience there, real tactical awareness.
Yeah, and what's really impressive about Como is how they're going about it. They spent some money in the summer, but it's not just about that. You can see that they've got a plan. There's a real structure to the team, and it's working. Yeah. This win against their local rivals, it's a real statement. They're not just happy to be in Serie A. They want to stay there.
Right.
And this victory is a huge confidence boost for them.
Finally, let's go back to Fiorentina for a second. So they were 2-0 down against Milan, but they fought back to 2-2, and you can argue that they should have won the game. They created so many chances.
Wow.
Even though they didn't win, it felt like there was something really positive about their performance.
Definitely. They went to the San Siro and they went for it. They wanted to win. Of course, conceding those 2 early goals is a worry, but the way they responded was fantastic. They could have scored 4 or 5 goals. Some great saves from the Milan goalkeeper kept them in the match. It feels like Fiorentina are really building something special.
Even in a draw, they showed how much they've improved. The fact that they created so many chances against a team like AC Milan, it just shows that they've got a really clear identity and they're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. We always talk about winning and losing, but Fiorentina's performance just shows how important it is to have the right attitude and to create chances. The fact that they came back from 2 goals down and just kept attacking, it tells you everything you need to know about their mentality. They're a team with a plan.
So we saw Inter drop points, which could blow the title race wide open. Mm-hmm. AC Milan showed their resilience, but they still need to sort out their defensive issues. Como got a huge win in the derby, which is massive for their survival hopes. And Fiorentina, even though they didn't win, they really impressed against Milan.
Exactly right. And all of these results, when you look at them together, they just go to show how unpredictable Serie A is. We're seeing teams having to dig deep. We're seeing more and more surprise results. And the pressure is just getting bigger and bigger at both ends of the table.
So as you're watching all this, I want you to think about this. What do these results really tell us about, the mental side of things? Are we seeing some teams grow in confidence, or are we actually seeing some teams starting to crack under pressure? And what does all of this mean for the big games that are coming up? The games that will decide who wins the title and who gets relegated. It's not just about what the scoreboard says. It's about momentum and the stories that are developing week after week.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We will be back next week to break down even more Serie A action.